Hey guys, in this video we'll talk about some of the fastest ways a Space Marine list can deliver a healthy dose of close combat kindness and compassion right to their enemy. So if you ever felt like the board is way too big and you never seem to make it across fast enough, stick around. And I've tried to find those that are not just fast but also have a pretty good level of efficiency to them, so they're not overly expensive for what they do and they can actually do some damage once they get there, and hopefully are also capable of taking at least some punch. Here's why it sometimes is very beneficial to have this sort of fast capacity to go and reach out and touch something that really did not want to be touched in the very early point of the game. If you're playing against someone who's very inexperienced, it can be a really devastating thing because they did not expect it. They may put something out which is very fragile and you can just almost end the game right there and then because you destroyed something like an asset they really needed for the entire game. With an experienced player, it will probably not happen like that. However, if you can actually cross the distance anyways, you can just create a lot of problems that your opponent, no matter how experienced they are, will have to solve all of them, and keep that in mind. And this sort of, what if I do this? What if he does that? What if he goes there? This is what takes a mental toll on your opponent's mind and makes them make mistakes. And also, sometimes they just cannot do anything. Sometimes they will have to be content with the fact that you can just cross the board and charge them and probably do some damage. So that's the power of this sort of melee alpha strike unit type. So you know why we are looking for these combinations and why they're so valuable. We'll start at something pretty mild in terms of the actual speed, but still very, very quick. And that's going to be Bladeguard veterans plus Captain Sicarius and Impulsor. The idea of the combo is that you use the Scout 6 that the Sicarius gives to the squad that he leads, and he obviously can lead the Bladeguard vets. You stack that on top of an Impulsor where you put these 7 models, which is another example why we needed the 7-man capacity for the Impulsor. If it's your turn 1, the Bladeguard veterans can then disembark at all of 9 inches, so 3-inch disembark, 9-inch move before the Impulsor has made its 6-inch scout move. And you have already activated your Assault Doctrine. Unfortunately, you cannot use the stratagem to get into Assault Doctrine for one unit because your unit was inside the transport. So you would have to burn a Doctrine to use that. But if you do all that, this brings your total threat range to 6 inches from the Scout, 6 inches from the move of the models, 3 inches from disembark, D6 from the advance, so we'll count that as 3.5 as the D6 average. You can technically increase that if you spend 1 CP for the reroll, but for the purposes of this video, we are always going to count that as the average on the dice roll. And the 12-inch potential charge, which is the maximum. When we mean threat range, we mean the absolute maximum that you can go. You will almost never gonna roll a 12 on the charge, but that's just like a way to calculate a threat range. You can technically do like the full potential maximum, which would be a 6-inch on the advance and then the maximum charge roll, but I like to count the advance as the fixed number and then the charge roll as the maximum. So a total of 30.5 inches, or if you were to roll an actual 6 on the advance, that will be 33 inches in total. That's a lot. If you think that usually the deployment zones are 24 inches apart, if you were to actually go 30.5 inches, you would go not only across the whole no man's land, you would also get like 10 inches into your opponent's deployment zone. Obviously, this is the theoretical maximum. You're not likely to roll a 12 on the charge. If you do like a conservative estimate, you would count the advance is 3.5 and then the charge is 7. So the actual average for this unit would be 25.5 inches, which is still more than the whole no man's land. What I also like about this combo in particular is that it leaves your Impulsor in relative safety because most of the distance is going to be traveled by your infantry unit, and you can actually put your Impulsor in such a way where it ends its scout move like somewhere behind the ruin, and then your infantry guys can go through the ruin, leaving your Impulsor in the safety hidden behind the walls. And the actual combo itself costs 160 points for the Bladeguard vets and 85 points for the Sicarius, so you're not sending the extra 80 points that the Impulsor costs into your enemy's embrace. It's not extremely expensive. It's an interesting combo. It also, why I like it, because you're using it in Gladius, you have access to 1 CP on the chapter, so you can go and bypass the problem that the Bladeguard have on their swords, making their swords strength 5 plus 1 to wound, and also AP 3 damage too, not AP 2. So they will do quite a lot of damage. They are on average capable with Sicarius of flipping one normal vehicle or monster, and that usually is enough to cause problems. Plus, Sicarius also gives them a 6-inch reactive move. They are by default annoying to be around. If you charge them into something that was like on a flank and then your opponent needs to send stuff there to try to get rid of them, they can just ghost back 6 inches and make a counter charge nigh impossible. Actually, funny enough, you can also replicate this combo as a Space Wolves one if you are playing the Saga of the Hunter detachment. There is the Swift Hunter enhancement you can give to a Space Wolves model, and then you can have like 6 head takers, for example, with the Wolfguard Battle Reader with this enhancement, and then you would be even faster because they get extra 1 inch on the scout, and they also get extra 1 inch on their move, so their actual maximum range would be 35 inches of threat range instead of 33 here. As I discussed before in my review of the Space Wolves Codex, I don't really like the Saga of the Hunter detachment because I don't like the lack of help in wounding high toughness threats. But if you have another solution for that in the roster, and this is your kind of anti-infantry / chaff skirmish piece, you can make it even faster then. As always, I want to remind you about my Patreon 40K coaching service. If you're looking for help building your competitive rosters, preparing you for tournaments, or have any questions about your collection in general, check out the links for my Patreon in the description. Thank you. Number 4 are Wolfguard Terminators plus Logan Grimnar plus a Venerable Dreadnought. So this one uses a different type of speed or mobility, which is teleportation. Thanks to Logan's ability, High King of Fenris, you can actually deep strike these Terminators turn 1, and it can be even a 10-man squad, so a very huge brick of nastiness right in your opponent's midst. Well, not right in there, but very close, 9 inches away to be precise. The trick here is not the deep striking in turn 1 part, which is cool definitely, but it's to actually make the charge, and I would not recommend this unless we had this another actor in the whole combination. Don't want to roll a 9-inch charge because it's far too risky and you're very unlikely to succeed. And that's where the Venerable Dreadnought comes into play. He has an aura of +1 to your advances and charges. It will not be easy, like not always at least, for you to actually put your Venerable Dreadnought initially in such a position where he then will be able to, with his 8-inch move, d6 +1 advance, to get within 6 inches of one of your Terminator models for you to get that +1 to the charge roll. But it's very much worth it, and it is possible. You only need one Terminator to be there. The other ones can be string out to the front from where you're actually going to be measuring the charge roll. Then the 8-inch charge is a much likelier endeavor. On average, you'll succeed in about, I would say, 4 out of 5 attempts, and the percentage-wise, it's 66% chance of a success with a command point reroll, compared to a 48% chance, so less than half, with a 9-inch rerollable charge. You can also use this to stage your Terminators instead of charging them turn 1 to occupy a very convenient spot on the table. For example, if your opponent has a very nice ruin somewhere in there, like close to their natural expansion objective, and they don't have any infiltrators there, you can just send your Terminators there and be like, okay, what are you gonna do now? Because you cannot not go to your natural expansion objective. You'll lose the game if you don't control objectives, so you will have to go and fight me there. And depending on like what detachment you're running, you can be running the Beast Slayer, for example, which has the reactive move, and then like it's almost impossible then for your opponent to charge your Terminators first, and that's bad for you because you don't want to be charged by Wolfguard Terminators with Logan first. So it's a very interesting combination. It does have a problem of sometimes you just will not roll an 8, and then you're just stood there in front of your opponent like, okay, what are you gonna do now? And the Terminators, the Wolfguard Terminators are not bad in terms of their durability. They are 4 wounds each with -1 to wound. They will be able to take some punch, but obviously not like the entire army shooting at them. So you need to be careful and conscientious about how you're using them, but I really think this is a cool combo, and it is very damn fast, because with teleportation you can essentially be anywhere you want on the board. Minus the Venerable Dreadnought, who needs to go and bring his aura with him so that you can actually make the charge. If you're using that to stage somewhere, you obviously don't need the Venerable Dreadnought then, but that's a different kind of a use case. Now, number 3 is something absolutely groundbreakingly fast on the ground. Like, if you put them on the table and launch them in a straight line, there are a few things that are faster than these guys. And that is Black Knights plus the Ravenwing Command Squad and the Company of Hunters detachment, which, I mean, it's not that popular, but ever since they gave this detachment advance and charge for mounted units, it's also not nearly as bad as it was. And why we want to run this in a Company of Hunters, apart from the advance and charge, which, I mean, we can get in Wrath of the Rock, for example, as well. This is not a unique ability. What is unique, actually, is the 9-inch scout enhancement that you can give to something like the Ravenwing Command Squad, giving you unprecedented first turn alpha strike potential in terms of the speed. You attach the Ravenwing Command Squad to the unit, and it also, apart from giving you access to the enhancement, gives you +1 to advances and charges. You can get the same with Samael. He gives his squad advance and charge, which you also already get, and if they already have the advance and charge, you get the +1 to advances and charges. But you cannot give Samael an enhancement, and that's what we really want from this unit. Apart from the +1 to advances and charges and the enhancement, Ancient also gives extra OC to models in the squad, which is great, bringing you up to OC3 on each of the bikes, so that's a huge OC bomb right there. You also have an Apothecary who can revive bikes, and I mean, you can revive normal Black Knights, but also you can revive the Ancient himself. So the Ancient and all the Command Squad bikes, they have 4 wounds each. So if you're being attacked by 3 wound guns, you can put the wounds on the Ancient, making it just a bit harder for your opponent to get rid of your bikes. And then if your squad survived, you can then heal the Ancient back to full, essentially restoring him, and then you have that shield again. But this efficiency is not exactly why we're here. We're here for the speed, and let's calculate that max theoretical threat range. Important disclaimer here is that unlike the previous ones, which were infantry based, this one is mounted, so you cannot go through walls, which means you will almost never actually get to these particular numbers, because, well, let's be honest, whenever you need to go around the wall, you're gonna lose some of those inches. Let's calculate. That will be 9-inch scout move plus 12-inch move, and that obviously is like if you're going turn 1. If you're going turn 2, you can still use the 9-inch scout move to get closer to a ruin, for example, and then right around it, but that's not exactly the same application. 9 plus 12 plus 4.5 on the advance, because you get +1 to your advance roll, plus 13 inches on your max charge roll. So it's going to be 38 plus 5 threat range, which is ridiculous. And also keep in mind that the 4.5 can easily be 7. Actual maximum threat range is 41 inches. It's simply insane. You can pretty much go on to your opponent's home objective at that point and just say hi to their unit over there. Think that this is actually how far you can charge is bananas. Drawback of this combo, before you get all excited, and I want you to have all the information. So the big drawback here is that unfortunately the Company of Hunters detachment doesn't provide you with good tools to buff your melee. So the actual punch from this 9-man squad would be not bad, but it also would not be as amazing as you might have hoped for. I mean, it's not such an expensive combo. It costs 320 points, but you still kind of expect it to be very deadly. And it's not very deadly. It's like, it's pretty good. Yeah, 3 attacks each on each of the Black Knights. They all have the devastating wounds on their Corvus hammers, so you would get 3 attacks, 5, 2, 1 with dev wounds. They get anti-monster, anti-vehicle 4+ on the charge. So if you're fighting against monsters and vehicles, you're fine, because the champion also in the squad, the champion also gets the anti-monster anti-vehicle 4+. However, if you're fighting against something like Deathshroud Terminators, for example, which are not vehicles, and you're wounding them on 5s, and you don't have any way to buff your efficiency in combat, this might not be ideal, let's say. One thing it's damn fast. Number 2 is very simple. It's just like the Space Wolves like it. It's Wulfen in the Gladius detachment plus a Repulsor, not the Executioner, the normal one. Simply put 5 Wulfen into a Repulsor. Sounds like a recipe, right? So put 3 Wulfen into a Repulsor, shake and add some salt, and you have a nice meal. Seriously, you just disembark them, you have the Assault Doctrine on, because as we discussed before, you cannot activate the Advance and Charge for them otherwise, unless you're like running this in the Stormlance detachment, which would be a separate conversation. For the purposes of this combo, we are learning them as Gladius, but yes, you can run them in Stormlands as well. You disembark them, they advance d6 inches, potentially get +1 to the advances and charges from the Venerable Dreadnought, as we discussed before, so a 4.5 on average on the advance with a maximum of 7. He would also give them the +1 to the charge, as we discussed, and let's do the math. 12 inches with the disembark on their move, 4.5 or 7 on the advance, and 13 inches on the charge roll maximum, so a healthy total of 29.5 or 32 inches. And that is very good. It's not as fast as the bikes, of course, but it also is an infantry unit and it costs only 100 points. And your Repulsor is going to be safe behind the wall, so you're not going to lose that asset. And you can, if you want to, repeat the same thing over again, only without the advance and charge, because again, you cannot really use a stratagem for that, and you can only activate the Assault Doctrine once. Or if this is Stormlands, well, then you definitely can continue doing this just as long as you want. So you can feed a Wulfen squad to your opponent one after another. And even a 5-man Wulfen squad, I mean, I would obviously want to send out a 10-man squad, but unfortunately a 10-man cannot fit into a Repulsor. A 5-man squad is still very dangerous with those Thunderhammers, and they can on average really flip a normal 12 wound tank, if you give them Oath, of course. Really simple, neat combination, and I really am starting to enjoy the idea of running this in Stormlands, because Stormlands has so many advantages for your Thunderwolf cavalry that, to be honest, it might be a good idea to consider this as a roster. And finally, last but definitely not least, is the Sanguinary Guard plus Dante and another Repulsor. This is probably my favorite combination that we discussed today, and I will explain why. You need Liberator Assault Group for this one. You can run this in Gladius as well, though I would not recommend it. I really think this is a lag-only combination. You can use it in Gladius, I just would not suggest it. Unfortunately, you cannot run this in Angelic Inheritors because those don't have Advance and Charge. I mean, you can, but it kind of ruins the whole idea. And the idea, again, is very simple. You put 6 Sanguinary Guard into a Repulsor, they take up all 7 seats, which makes my inner perfectionist really happy. Whenever I think of the fact that it's like the full Repulsor is utilized, it makes me smile. Probably it's some sort of psychological condition, I'm sure. Dante gives them +1 to advances and charges, and also +1 to hit and like a battle shock thing, and also his really nasty axe, but mainly we're now interested in the +1 advance and charge part. And let's do some quick math. 3-inch disembark, 12-inch move, 4.5 or 7-inch advance, a 13 maximum charge roll, a total of 32.5, that's with the average advance, or 35 inches from the get-go. And this, even though it's not the highest number that we heard today, it might just be the actual fastest combo that we looked at, and here's why. This unit combo doesn't care about who goes first, because there's no scout involved here. It doesn't care about the ruins in the way. It doesn't care about any enemy screens as well. Whatever they have in front of their actually important units, you don't care. You just go there and smite them, because they did not listen to the all-loving Emperor. It's also a very punchy unit. It doesn't have the problem of like the Ravenwing bikes. They are not gonna strike softly. There'll be 9 attacks from just Dante at strength 10, AP 3 damage, 2 with lethal hits. Then 5 attacks each on the charge from the Sanguinary Guard at strength 8, AP 3 damage 2. Hitting on 2s, and obviously you can add as many extra buffs to that as you want. Most likely you're going to be just using the Red Rampage strat for either lance or lethal, or you can use both if you want to battle shock them. And strength 8 with lance is quite nasty, and obviously you can have Oath on top of that, which you might not even need that, to be honest, hitting on 2s. This unit does Alpha Strike like pretty much no one else can, and it doesn't cost, well, it does cost a lot, 360 points, but at least you're not feeding your opponent the Repulsor. Repulsor is gonna stay in the relative safety behind ruins, whilst your golden guys are going to hunt. Do let me know which one is your favorite fastest melee combo out of the ones that I mentioned. I really like them all, to be honest, and whenever I'm talking about each of them, I really want to put them on the table and play with them, but probably my favorite one is going to be ever, forever, for now, for this edition, this Sanguinary Guard plus Dante. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.